Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it here on NAC TV with us. I'm Eoin Devereux, journalist with the Banner Press, welcoming you once again to the show. And with me this week, Casper Wehrhahn. Casper, journalist with the Banner Press as well. Great to have you in this week.
Thanks for having me here. And as you can tell, we're getting into the festive spirit here, as you can see by our decorations. And very timely. We're trudging along through December actually quite quickly, Eoin.
I'm not sure of the choice of words, trudging.
Maybe not trudging.
Sometimes it feels that way, let's be honest.
Yeah, with our big old boots on and all that, getting out and about, yeah.
And don't get me started on having to shop. You know what? That's the thing, Casper. My family's gift to each other each and every year is not having to do any shopping for one another. We know what we like. We have our own money. We can buy it ourselves. So Mom, Dad, thank you each and every year for the gift of not having to go down to Walmart and buy stuff that you don't need. and I the same for me. I mean, I can buy my own socks. So, yeah. But hopefully, you'll be able to spend it with your family. That's the big thing about the holiday season, is spending it with your family, having those special times, those special moments. And one of those special moments came rolling into the Westman area very recently. And it's on the front page of this week's edition of the Banner Press. It's the official holiday train, which goes from coast to coast. During the holiday season, it is lit up like you wouldn't believe. All these festive lights, bands involved. It'll stop in a certain community. The side of one of the train sort of carts will open up, and the musicians will do a performance there. I've seen it many a time myself. When I was working in Portage la Prairie, I saw it when it rolled in there one year, and then was very fortunate because that was my last year in Portage la Prairie, and then the very next year I came and worked here in Neepawa, and they scheduled it so it was going to arrive in Neepawa, so I got to see it twice in a row, which was very nice, and it is worth the time. This year it didn't roll into Neepawa, but it did come into Carberry. We're very appreciative. We had several people take pictures. Mike Waddell was down there, and John Drinkwater was down there, and one of Mike's pictures, in fact, right on the front page of this week's edition of the paper. Have you ever, Casper, had a chance to go down and check out anything like that in the past?
Yeah, once or twice. I think there was a year it stopped in Minnedosa before, and my family went out to see that. And then I think we also went out potentially when it came through Neepawa. We were going to see it in Brandon when it rolled through Brandon, but unfortunately we weren't able to make it out there. But yeah, it's always a wonderful thing to go and experience and enjoy, with all the lights and everybody just sort of enjoying the festive cheer.
That's right, and it didn't come through Neepawa this year because they do have different sort of systems, different tracks that they will do from year to year so that they can sort of share this with as many people as possible. But from the bits and pieces I've heard over the years from the representatives with the holiday train, Neepawa is now on their system. So it might not be every year, but from the sounds of it, it might be every other year or something along the lines, because when we did have the opportunity, people stepped up. It was a story maybe we did in 2019, I think, because I was there and taking pictures, and just the amount of people that were there, it was a massive amount. It was amazing to see that many people there together, just enjoying the celebratory spirit of the whole thing. And that's really what Christmas and the holiday season is all about. Not everyone celebrates Christmas, so some people say, happy holidays, that type of thing. If that offends you, then get over yourself. But, have a crazy Kwanzaa, have a happy Hanukkah, have a Merry Christmas, have a Festivus, if you like. Whatever the gambit is for you, whatever you'll roll with, hopefully your holiday season is going to be a good one and family-filled, because that's what it's all about. We're going to shift gears over slightly to something else. We did a little preview on it in this week's paper, just a snippet, just an appetizer, because the full story we're going to have in next week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press, and very glad that we're going to be able to talk about it. And this is one that you did, Casper, talking about some very special plaque presentations that are going to be happening here in Neepawa.
Yeah, they're very, very special presentations at the Beautiful Plains Community Medical Clinic. That'll be happening the day after we're done filming, actually, at 6 p.m. There's going to be a small celebration there to honor both Dr. George Eoin, who is retiring after about 50 years or so of practicing there, as well as helping to advise the developments of the medical clinic, and the late Arnie Susky as well, who's also been very instrumental in the development of the clinic. So it'll be good. It'll be good. Both people definitely very worth celebrating, and that the community should be proud of.
That's right. It is happening. When we record this, it is December 8th when we're recording it. Hopefully you'll be able to see it, or you'll see a copy of this in the newspaper, because it's happening on December 9th at around 6 o'clock down at the medical clinic. I'm sure it's open to the public if you want to go down there and be part of this celebration of these two individuals who were so significant to the longevity and health of the medical clinic. Dr. Eoin, as Casper said, has been a physician in the area for so long and has been so supportive and such a big proponent for the medical clinic, who recently retired. And of course, Arnie, I've had a couple dealings with Arnie over the years, not just with the medical clinic, his other facets of the community. He was always stepping up. He was always putting in work. Like, I'll be honest, I remember one story, Casper, it was a couple years ago, and we had that story in the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. If I remember correctly, it was Arnie and Murray Parrott that were putting together this new, very high-tech sort of scanning system. I'm not going to remember the actual name of the machinery, but this certain scanning system that's able to do x-rays and more than that as well. And they were unpackaging it, and I was trying to get a couple pictures as well, and ended up having to help them unbox the thing. And I'll tell you, that thing was heavy as an SOB. It was really just like, oh my God, this is work. I went to school. I went to journalism school to get out of doing actual work, but now here I am having to do an honest day's pay again.
Yeah, you're still lifting things and hauling them around. Yeah,
exactly. But there they were. Murray and Arnie were just going at it. They weren't even breathing heavy. They weren't even just sort of. They just saw that the work had to get done and got to work on there. So those are little things I remember about Arnie. Is a stand-up guy. He really was. And the fact that he and Dr. Eoin are being honored in this way, that's very appreciative that the clinic sees that and is doing something about it. And there's going to be a legacy for them for years to come, a well-deserved legacy for years to come. We're going to have follow-up on that story, some pictures of the presentation, some information on that. In the next edition, I'm planning on being down there myself to get pictures and the details. That'll be following up in the December 16th edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. But we still got a lot of work to do right here on the December 9th edition of the Banner Press. Casper, you were able to get a story. This is interesting. With so much issues about medical care and these types of things in smaller communities, it's a nice change of pace to hear about a community getting new physicians and new doctors in there. And this one is very unique in that it's focused on dentistry.
Yeah, I admit we actually got to this story late because of when we heard about it, because this facility actually opened officially on October 31st, but we only just caught wind of it like last week or the week before late. But Dr. Sharma, who I had communications with via email there, very busy man, actually opened Gladstone Family Dental in Gladstone at the Gladstone Health Center on 24 Mill Street in October there, right at the end of the month. And this is a very needed facility by the sounds of it. I think they might have had a dental clinic in Gladstone before. I don't know what happened to it. I'm not familiar with the history there. But after so long, they finally have a facility open again. It is only open a couple days per week because he does also work in Winnipeg, and they're still working on accepting new clients at the Gladstone facility. But he's very excited, by the sounds of it, to have opened his own practice here. He's been working in Winnipeg at, I believe it was Clarity Dental, for about 2 years now or so, after getting all of his qualifications together, doing schooling in India and then coming to Canada later on to finish his education and get his sort of official papers, as it were. But yeah, he spoke of, the need in Gladstone, people just living in Gladstone in general having to travel so far for any sort of dental work. And then, of course, accessibility for people who can't drive in general, or specifically seniors as well, having difficulty getting out to get those things done too. So that's a role that he's really looking forward to filling, by the sounds of it. And I think people in Gladstone will be very happy to hear about this.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, sometimes, we like to talk to ourselves and talk of ourselves in the community of Neepawa being a small town. But quite honestly, maybe that's something we shouldn't talk about anymore, because we're getting so many different businesses, we're getting so many different organizations and expansions here in the town. Maybe we take for granted the fact that there's so many doctors here, that there's so many dentists here, so many optometrists. For the most part, everything we need, we can access right here in Neepawa. And smaller communities, like Gladstone, like Carberry, like St. Rose, don't have that immediate access like we do. Let's not take any of this, what we have here, for granted. It is wonderful to be able to hear and to be able to share with you this story of an opportunity in Gladstone being created for the people of Gladstone. We always like to think of ourselves, we try our best to be not just Neepawa's paper, but the region's paper. When it comes to these types of things, we do good sometimes we don't. We try our best each and every time, though, I assure you. So it's wonderful to be able to share this story just a little down the road with you on that. And again, you talked about maybe we're a little behind on that. I don't know, because again, I talked about this last week with Ken Waddell, because last week's paper and last week's show, if you watched it, was a little light on, well, everything, to be honest with you. Because we were so sick collectively. I had a heck of a flu I had to deal with. Casper, you had, I guess, the flu as well there.
Yeah, and
it's like,
still recovering a little bit with a bit of a cough, yeah.
Yeah, like the funny thing is, last week, the week everyone was sort of sick and out of the weather, Diane Warner, who does all our ads and all of that, looks after the classifieds, was the only one in the office. I'm sure she was fine with that for the most part, but it was like so quiet. Diane had to bring one of her little dogs in just to keep company there. So I didn't realize that was an option.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's always a little bit strange when you're the only person in the office back there. It's such a big open space, and you're just like, huh. Yeah. I mean, like, no complaints. It's a little nice, but also just, it's odd.
That's the weird thing as well, because we are, with the many people we have worked with over the years, we essentially are the two townies in the office here. Everyone else has little acreages or whatnot outside of Neepawa. So at least once a year during the winter, there's that big snowfall that comes in and nobody can make it in the office. And there's been one or two times where you haven't been able to make it in the office. And there's been one or two times when I haven't made it in the office for one reason or another. And it's just like, it's empty. It's an echo in there. Mm-hmm. So Diane had a chance to sort of deal with what we usually deal with at least once a year last week.
Yeah, sort of a strange role reversal there, if you will. Yeah.
All right, let's get back into the pages here. I got to admit, Casper, this next story, I got to admit, I'm one of those individuals that had no idea that this organization even existed. Ignorance on my part about what this group is all about. So educate me and educate our viewership.
Honestly, this was a learning experience for me as well. It was my first time really hearing of this and of the condition as well, which if that's the case, then you're in the majority. But Westman Aphasia Inc. is facing imminent closure, unfortunately. And for those who don't know, because it is not very well known, aphasia is sort of the progressive decline or loss of, your ability to speak, understand what others are trying to tell you, difficulty reading and writing due to a variety of causes. A lot of the time it's from stroke, but it can be caused by progressive brain disorders as well, Alzheimer's, dementia, that sort of thing. Because you sustain damage to the parts of your brain that sort of deal with communication. And Westman Aphasia Inc. sort of works to provide awareness about aphasia, but also, programs to help people living with aphasia and their caregivers, etc., to communicate more effectively together as it progresses or develops. And as well, opportunities to meet with other people that have aphasia and sort of understand what they're going through. And this facility in Brandon has been operating for about 14 years or so to, provide those services and raise awareness. And unfortunately, just due to funding, because it's not part of the province's healthcare program, it's its own thing. It operates based on public and private donations and any grants they can get, as long as the grants are for a program, because it doesn't cover any wages. And a need for volunteers. They're very close to actually having to close their doors because the current CAO, for one, Susan Cable, who has been involved with it for quite some time now, is officially resigning at the end of the year. But so they need a new CAO and office manager, for one, but also other volunteers too, and more funding to help support them, because it is a lot to take on. And that's something that they've really been wanting to do, is get funding to help support these people and hopefully get more people stepping up. But so far nobody has, and hopefully that will change and they can turn things around before the end of the year, because it sounds like it's going to actually affect quite a lot of people.
That's right. The story, to give away a little bit from the story, it's in around 50 or so people that are directly sort of corresponding with the
Yeah,
aphasia.
50 people directly, and Cable estimates that thousands indirectly will be affected by the closure here. The next closest facility, I believe she said, is in like Toronto or something. So lots of people in Manitoba for sure will have to go a lot farther if they want those kinds of supports.
These are the types of stories I love when they get sent our way and we're able to do the research as Casper did and to be able to share these. Because again, as I said, I think of myself as a relatively educated guy. I try to pay attention to what happens in and around my community and in and around Western Manitoba. But as I said, I got to be honest, I had no idea about this organization and what they did and the importance of what they do until I read this, until we were sitting down going through final look-overs and had a chance to go through and read about it and learn about it. And it's a darn shame now if we lose something like this. As Casper said, this is an organization that is very special and very unique to Manitoba and a large portion of central Canada. So hopefully you take a few minutes, you learn a little bit about it, and maybe if you can help out in any little way, shape or form, help out. Just because it's based out of Brandon doesn't mean it's Brandon. It's something that affects all of Western Manitoba and all of Manitoba from the sounds of it. So I dearly hope that you will take a moment of your time, learn a little bit. If you can think of one way or another to help out, always wonderful. All right, let's get a little more festive. As we said, the holiday season is here, the Christmas season is here, and for some people, they don't have those family members that they're able to visit with. So Christmas can be a lonely time of the year. So I'm very glad to hear that a local group, after a couple years of hiatus, because of circumstances related to COVID-19, related to restrictions and requirements, provincial requirements and all that, weren't able to do things. But this year they're able to do it again. We're going to be having an event happening on Christmas Eve down at Arts Forward, the Jingle and Mingle Community Christmas Gathering. I'm very glad to be able to share some of the details with you on that. They've also done a touch of advertising in the paper. That's always appreciated. I'll be honest with you about that as well. But we also wanted to share more in depth than what you can see in an ad. And this is when I had a chance to speak with Marvin Beaumont about it. He's one of the individuals involved with the Neepawa Christmas Dinner Committee. They're the ones putting this together. They've put the celebratory Christmas dinner together many a year, Casper. This year they've decided to go with more of a appetizers, finger food, treat sort of thing, as opposed to the full dinner. And they did that for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is after a few years of not being able to put it on, it takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, and a little bit of person power to be able to organize something like this. So you don't jump in both feet at the same time. I mean, if you don't think you're going to be able to handle it, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And them being able to do any sort of gathering really is very important because having previewed this story in the past, the Beaumonts have been involved with it for quite a while. So I recall always talking to one of their family. It's a very important thing for people to gather at this time of year and just get that community fellowship. And that was really the focus of the dinner, although the yummy food, of course, has been a bonus. So them being able to gather Arts Forward and just have more of a tea and appetizers thing it means a lot.
That's very true. That is the other point that they brought up, is that in talking with people about this, they found that the social aspect of it was much more important to people than the quote-unquote food aspect. I mean, just to be able to get together and talk to people and sort of share in the holiday festivities was much more important to the collective from the sounds of it. So that's why they decided to go with this gathering that's going to be happening on Boxing Day in the afternoon. You're going to have to check out the story to get the specific details and whatnot there. I'm very glad to have been able to speak with Marvin on this. He shared some wonderful details on that, and it's great to be able to see things like this going on once again in Neepawa after the last few years. You don't realize how important little things like this are until they're missing. So
Yeah. So definitely for it to come back is a wonderful thing to see, and hopefully things will stay calm and it'll keep going for years to come uninterrupted.
That's right. All right, let's go over to the sports section of our newspaper. It's a very special event recently occurred in Neepawa, something that we as a community should be very proud of. We hosted the volleyball provincials here at NACI and as well Neepawa Middle School assisted with some of the games. It was the AAA Provincial Senior Girls Volleyball Championships that went on. And to be able, for Neepawa, to be able to host something like this is meaningful. And I'm going to explain just to a small degree here why. I hope you take a few minutes, read the story in the paper, on the pages of the Banner Press, because we talk so much about hockey this time of year. I try to get as many other sports in as possible. And I always appreciate the help from organizers and individuals involved with those groups in getting the information my way. Always appreciative, much like this one here. Neepawa Tigers, only for a couple years, have been involved in AAA sports, AAA high school athletics. It's usually been AA for so many years, but because of the growth of Neepawa and their school system, they have been bumped up to AAA. That's fantastic, but at the same time, a lot of the AAA teams are based in urban areas in Winnipeg, a large contingent in Winnipeg, in larger communities such as Winkler, Steinbach. So competing can be difficult for Neepawa. There's only so many. I believe Dauphin might be the only one in our immediate area that is also AAA. So getting an opportunity to bring these individual teams in And to be able to challenge themselves in this way is huge. And speaking to the organizers on this, it was big both on the court and off the court. Even though they didn't win the championship, they did finish in a top 5 position. And there was a real sense of accomplishment from the girls to be able to do that, to compete throughout the entire weekend against top tier competition and to be able to prove that they belong with that top tier competition. That's wonderful. That's a good thing about sports. I mean, people sometimes get caught up, Casper, in winning or losing, but just the self-challenge of it as well is a big part of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And not being a sports person myself, it can sometimes be hard to grasp really the maybe not gravity is the right word of these sorts of events, but definitely reading this story, I could get a really good sense of the effort that everyone was putting forward on and off the court, and how important this was to them as well. And just fantastic experience, of course. Eoin said it probably better than I ever could, but just congratulations to them, honestly. And getting into the top 5 there, that's incredible. You should be very proud of that for sure.
You know what I really liked as well, Casper, was some of the off-the-court type stuff. I had an opportunity to speak with the winning coach of the entire tournament, and he said he was pleasantly, genuinely surprised and to a degree humbled by the response from the students. The students of NACI showed up to all games. So sometimes you just sort of hang out and you check out your own team, and once your own team's been eliminated, maybe you don't pay attention anymore.
Yeah.
They were out in full force throughout in the final, and they were loud and they were boisterous and they were supportive, and they said, you know what, Neepawa showed every team that came out here something, and it was a positive. So you love to hear that. If you want to get a little more information on that, you can find that story on page 12 of this week's paper. Even if you're not big into sports, I hope you're big into community spirit and take a moment to read it and just see the Neepawa stepped up in this way, in a big way, and that matters. There's so much other sports stuff we could talk about as well. I'm not going to go too far in depth. We've got the Neepawa Titans. They had a pair of games recently against the Swan Valley Stampeders, one of the hottest teams in the MJHL right now. If you want to find out how they did, you can, of course, watch on NAC TV. Check your local listings for any and all Neepawa Titans games, or you can check it out in the newspaper as well. The Neepawa Farmers, our Senior A team, they had a game at home recently. They did very well. There's a bunch of young kids, former Neepawa Titans / Junior A Hockey Club / native players who are a part of that team, continuing to play because they love the sport so much. So always try and support them. Next week's edition, we haven't had many Tigers games as of late at home. I've been under the weather, so I haven't been able to cover them. But we'll have a Tigers game in next week's edition, just all sorts of stuff. And not only that, next week's edition as well, we're going to have some more pictures. We got 1 or 2 pictures on page 19 of the final dress rehearsal for Little Mermaid Junior. We're going to have a whole bunch more pictures in next week's newspaper from the major production for NACI. I went in there, Casper, and I was impressed with the costumes and everything they did on that. So I think it's going to go over very well.
Yeah, and I was actually going to mention the costumes too. They look incredible. You'll get that preview on page 19, of course, but definitely look forward to seeing more of that. If you can, go to the performance, but in the paper as well, because we'll definitely be highlighting that.
That's right. So many things. If you're not into sports, maybe some theater. If you're not into theater, maybe some community-geared events like that. There's so much that goes on in a community like Neepawa, and we try and get out to each and every event. Sometimes we can't. That's why we need your help from time to time. If you do have story ideas or suggestions, come on in or talk to us over the phone at 476-3401 or email us at news@neepawabanner.com. I can't guarantee we're going to cover every event. We're a small town paper. We try the best we can, but genuinely we do try. And we thank you for sort of dealing with us and helping us and bearing with us from time to time. So for Casper, I'm Owen Devereux. Thanks for tuning in to the Story Behind the Stories. Have a good week.